Room systems in 2020. Before COVID, we needed them in some of our rooms some of the time. During COVID, we didn't need them in any of our rooms any of the time because everyone was working at home. But as folks begin to return to the office, we're going to need them in all rooms all of the time. I sat down with industry guru Nic Milani of Crestron to dig deeper into the need for room systems going forward, not just for increases in productivity, but also for our safety. Hi, Nick. It's great to see you.
Good to see you as well.
You know, the burning question of the day when we think about room systems in this kind of COVID environment is why are we even thinking about room systems when we've got most of our workforce still working at home?
Yeah, I think the big transition here is that we have instantly equipped an entire generation of workers on a work from anywhere capability. And that's an important nuance because it really does acknowledge the fact that people do indeed want to work from work. They want to have a space they can go and gather, that we're close to each other, that ability to collaborate, create ideas, share information. There really is no replacement for that. And while I think some of that got deferred, people are very much now interested in not only returning to the workspace, but how do I make it more intelligent? Knowing what we know today, how do I take the lessons and that we've learned and apply those and create a better space for people?
We didn't really have a chance to prepare for sending all our entire workforce home. We do have the opportunity to plan for them coming back to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the truths about our space too is a lot of that is deferred maintenance. A lot of the technology that Crestron particularly builds is 5-year warranty, but it lasts 10, 15 years. And so there's a lot of outdated equipment. And in a lot of ways, that room-based technology hasn't evolved for the new way that people work, the more advanced collaboration. Then you add in the special circumstances of looking at how many people are in the spaces. And we've responded by layering in technologies that add more intelligence so that we can safely bring people back in to co-collaborate, work together, and be more effective.
I guess in kind of pre-COVID, when most people were in the office for meetings, I mean, technology was a nice to have for sure. Being able to extend out to a few remote workers, but a lot of meetings, everyone was present, so a room system wasn't necessarily required for every interaction, right?
Yeah, and in fact, if you were a remote participant, you were kind of a third world citizen. Oftentimes what would happen is if you were joining remotely, then you were kind of left on the outside, maybe trying to insert a point or two here or there. And that was both a function of the dynamics and the culture around remote collaboration and also the technology, to be honest with you. Oftentimes a remote participant couldn't be heard. They couldn't hear the people directly in the spaces that they were working. And so that's part of that further reinvestment is the idea that now coming back out of this, first, we have to acknowledge that some percentage of the staff will not be back in the office due to whatever personal situation or being an increased risk, and that as we come back, there's always going to be this blended environment. So now it needs to be a much more egalitarian approach to the people in the room and the people outside the room to ensure that all of us are truly working together.
I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, we don't know exactly when people are going to go back or what percentage are going to go back, but we know there's going to be a split. We know that, and I guess it doesn't matter whether it's 20% of the workforce goes back or 80%. We're going to have that other percent that's going to be still working at home while others are in the office. So it's a little bit counterintuitive to think that room systems are going to be even more important than they were in the past.
Yeah, they absolutely will be. And the thing I would challenge all of your listeners too is do not think of room systems in your traditional framework. The room systems of the future, it's going to be ubiquitous access to video, ubiquitous access to content sharing, and ubiquitous access to content distribution. And that's one of those big areas that really hasn't caught up. The technology, the imagination of the industry hasn't caught up to the technology, if I can say that.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about coming back into those spaces and being able to dynamically kind of overflow, how do we do virtual town halls? How do we ensure that everyone's heard and being seen? Those are very different when it's a day-to-day, day in and day out mission critical versus, oh, every once in a while Tom's remote and we got to bring him into the conversation.
It's going to be a burden for a lot of organizations to have to support a virtual side to every single in-person call.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're ready for that.
Well, I can tell you in talking to several technology managers, both at large institutions, higher ed, and also corporate organizations, They're terrified. This is what I call the UC, or the video conferencing inversion, right? We had a 15% use before, and now it's going to invert to an 85% use. And oh, by the way, we're not going to 7X our support staffs to do that.
Mm.
This is an area where, it's been interesting. We invested heavily in an IoT-based cloud solution a few years ago we call XIO Cloud, which allows us to manage all these devices remotely. And it's had a lot of success, but I don't think it's got it hasn't been adopted at the hyperscale we expected until now. Because you look at one of those IT managers and they go, okay, wait a second, I've got to 10X my video conferencing footprint. And oh, by the way, I've got to support video conferencing both internal into my organization and at people's homes. We're not even talking about the support at people's homes yet. And a tool like that becomes critically important because it just makes you so you can reach into people's spaces and really manage it remotely with the same staff you've already got.
I think another thing people are kind of struggling with is, they kind of had their direction of what tools we're going to use kind of pre-COVID. Then COVID hits, and all of a sudden, Zoom goes from 10 million daily users to 300 million. And so the tools that we've used has changed somewhat, and certainly the adoption has. We've seen 5 or 10 years of growth in these areas, and a huge acceleration. How are you guys kind of positioning to work with this environment where Zoom's come on very strong? You've got other tools like Teams that are out there as well. How are you guys kind of positioning your portfolio in this kind of multi vendor environment?
Yeah. So first off, we're lucky to partner with both Teams and Zoom. So that's a nice part of it. In fact, our portfolio allows a user even to switch devices. This is one of the, switch providers over time. So you might be a Zoom shop today, but migrating to Teams in the future, you can use the same hardware to do that, both those services. So that helps tremendously. But really for the end user, it's about a consistent experience everywhere people work, down to the control panel that makes you, that allows you to function the space itself. So whether our new, device, the mini and small spaces, up through our integration kit, which allows you to have that one touch to join in the CEO's boardroom or in the most complicated of conferencing rooms and spaces, and all the places in between, we've got a way to easily, quickly connect via video conferencing. And those tools, luckily, now are become second nature for everybody, really because of that one touch to join, the simplicity of it. No longer are we doing the IP address pound bridge number nonsense where you felt like you needed to have a special degree to make it work. But beyond video conferencing, we're also doubling down our investment in room scheduling, wayfinding technologies, occupancy sensors, people counting technologies. How do we help people more efficiently find rooms and know that the rooms are clean, safe, and available for them?
Mm.
And then we come even a layer back and we start thinking about content distribution and how do we share information within the walls of our organization. We used to be able to put 15 people in the conference room. Now we can only put 6 people in the conference room. How do we dynamically overflow content to adjacent spaces so that they can participate without sacrificing that kind of rich media experience that people are sharing from their phones, their laptops, whatever devices come into the space? Because video conferencing obviously has had a huge increase in use, but it's not the only technology that's going to let us help safely navigate these new collaboration waters of work from anywhere.
Well, I think there's a certain degree of organizations that they need to have confidence before they send people back to the office, and we're seeing kind of they want to be careful. They obviously want to respect their employees.
Thank God, right? I mean, this
safety and health. Yeah,
absolutely good.
Well, and it's amazing how much technology has done to already. I mean, you hate to say it's we're in the life-saving business here, but I to think about what things would have been like 15 years ago or 20 years ago, where we couldn't send people home, and we're really forced to send them back to the office to keep our our economy from just cratering.
Yeah.
It's neat to see these innovations not just make things a little bit easier like they have in the past, but essential to our survival as a country.
I mean, we'll look back on this, we've all just been in survival mode, right? I think we're all collectively starting to pull our heads up to just what we've been going through, because human beings are amazing at coping. It's one of the things that makes us truly amazing as a species, if you get down to it, is our ability to cope with very challenging situations. I think we'll look back on this and go, that inversion, that flip with technology, I don't know that you'll see another example of that non-wartime example of a huge impact technology's had. Mm-hmm. And it's been pretty wild to be at the forefront of it. And to think about that, that 10 million to 300 million, those numbers, and just the radical expansion that every IT leader in the world had to go through to support these teams. And now ultimately, in the unknown, having these versatile systems that are going to support them as they come out of it as well. It's pretty incredible.
And back to the confidence, being able to be confident that you can bring back people safely. You mentioned a couple things that I thought were really, really interesting. One of them is scheduling, and one of them are capacity measures. Can you talk
Yeah.
just about how those are, companies can use those to kind of help make sure they're respecting the safety of their employees?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of we've done a lot of work in this area. One's around occupancy, being able to count the number of folks in the room and understanding when you exceed limits and being able to trigger alerts to staff and be able to measure and quantify over time. We're seeing a lot of organizations that want to extend beyond that also to contact tracing, not necessarily understanding everybody Tom's talked to that day, but let's just containerize it. Who's been in the building, right? Who's been in those spaces? Um, those then all connect into the room scheduling solutions, where we use the room scheduling panel outside the room to communicate to people that, are they at the right room? Does the room have, too many people in it? When's the room available next? You start to extend that even further, because a lot of our systems, Crestron's this really interesting company, right? We come from the custom world, but we've really moved to the out of the box. So some of the things that we've seen in the custom side of the house is organizations taking our technologies and integrating them into new solutions. As an example, there's a startup in New York City that's using Crestron hardware to actually turn on UV sanitizing lights inside of rooms. Our occupancy sensor will know that nobody's in the room, i.e. it's safe, fire up that UV light, blast the room, kill all the bugs. The scheduling panel outside the room tells you the percentage of completion when it's done, and then I'll let you know when the next one's scheduled. So this is where it's a really exciting time to be at Crestron, and our technology and our customer first approach and really being responsive is allowing us to come back with these solutions that help instill the confidence, to your point.
Mm-hmm. So last question as we wrap up here. I've just heard of those back burner projects of things like room systems. Obviously we've talked about the importance of that. So what advice do you have to CIOs that maybe put that on a back burner for this year? What is your advice to them as they look at reopening their offices?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as you're returning, we've touched on a lot of key topics, but don't go back with the same approach. I think that you have to have one system that can be managed by, a massive system at scale managed by a handful of people. It needs to be video conferencing, it needs to be scheduling, it needs to be content distribution internally so that we have flexible ability to share information and content without touching necessarily the cloud or an outside service. And ultimately put that under a wrapper. Put that under a wrapper of one tool that people can use to really monitor, manage, and to analyze how people are working. And as you do that, you'll start to see the power of that kind of platform approach. Because I think that the nasty truth a lot about these in-room technologies is it's never been a platform level approach. It's been an individual room solution. And when we take that to a platform level, much the way we did our personal devices or laptops, it changes the way we think about that technology, how we support it, and how we deploy it. And ultimately, the most important thing is to know is that we have 400 people around the world that are here to help.
Hmm.
And that's our sales team, our technical team, and we're here to help you take that journey and figure out the right solution for your culture, your organization, your locations. And that's also true. It's not just in one size fits all.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Nick, for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Tom, it's always good to see you. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks. If you would like to be featured on a future episode of On Convergence, please reach out. You can go to our website at onconvergence.com, where you can find more information about the channel, as well as blog posts, speaking engagements, and other analyst activities. And thanks again for watching.